I think that if you were to go down an interesting rabbit hole, one would be Hayao Miyazaki's creative career. So earlier
As
this
an
year,
assassin.
as an assassin, earlier this year, I read a recently published in English translation of one of his earliest works called Shuna's Journey. So, in the summer of 1983, 2 years before the founding of Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki published a 152-page illustrated storybook that was inspired by the mythology of the Tibetan plateau. Specifically, it was a folk tale called "The Prince Who Became a Dog," and it's about this impoverished kingdom where the people survive by only eating meat and milk and drinking milk. And this benevolent prince basically embarks on this like journey to the west, to save his people. But instead of like in the Chinese journey to the west, stealing like bringing back the sutras, he
Sure.
goes and he needs to save his people by stealing barley from a demonic serpent. And then during an encounter with this like being, the prince is transformed into a dog and sent home. And during his return journey, the love of this girl transforms him back into a human so he can successfully sow barley seeds for his people. Um, but it is a beautiful illustrated storybook that's done in watercolor by Miyazaki. But what I think is very interesting, and the rabbit hole that I would recommend going down, is comparing his different works. He has done a very interesting job of drawing on like pan-European inspirations for some of his work and pan-Asian inspiration for some of his work. If you look at his like filmography and his, I guess, portfolio, I should say, because he's more than just a director. His portfolio, he has basically drawn from everything, right? If you're,
Hmm.
he has is very clearly fond of European settings. If you look at like Porco Rosso, that's the Adriatic Sea. Kiki's Delivery Service is the an island called Gotland in Sweden. Howl's Moving Castle is inspired by the architecture of France. But then
Nazca Valley, the wind is Ohio, you know.
yeah, Nazca Nazca Valley of the Wind is like a really interesting one because it is what many people criticize D&D for, being this world of blended inspirations, right? Because like
Hmm.
Nazca has inspiration from like Greek epics, the Heian period Japanese tales, Ukrainian wetlands, and of course like the art of Mobius, like his science fantasy landscapes.
Yeah.
Um, and even if you look at earlier works from Miyazaki, he did this one called Sabaku no Tami in '69, and it's essentially a fictionalized version of the Central Asian Silk Road. He's done like everything. Like Princess Mononoke is the Muromachi period and the Amishi people. And then My Neighbor Totoro is basically all about this this genre that we were talking about, the Yashike, the idea of healing and nature, and obviously the a lot of Shinto in Totoro. But if you dig deep into Miyazaki's portfolio, it's just really interesting because he is this creator who has successfully drawn from all of these different cultural, historical sources of inspiration and made these beloved works. And I think Shuna's Journey specifically is one that I think very few people have actually read. So I recommend going and getting yourself a copy of that book. It is really beautiful. His watercolors are detailed and he is very minimalistic with his use of text. And he has taken a very thoughtful approach to honoring the Tibetan source material while making his own unique fantasy world. It's actually a really good example of fantasy world building um, that draws on a very clear cultural inspiration without being problematic. I really like it. And
Yeah, I
so,
don't know if I was
yeah,
aware of how wide a breadth
yeah.
his work was, because I'm used to the really stereotypical, things that he has worked on, the things that everyone knows
Everybody
about.
knows about Nausicaa. Everybody knows about Princess Mononoke. It's
Yeah.
it's interesting because if you like those two specifically, the main character in Shuna's journey is like the prototype for all of his
Oh,
most
okay.
famous characters because like there are a lot of similarities with Princess Mononoke, Like Shuna has a mount that looks like an elk, and it's called Yakul, and it's very similar to Ashitaka's sort of mount, which shares the same name. Um,
Mm,
they There's also a character in Shuna's journey that is very narratively and aesthetically similar to Jigo in Princess Mononoke, and then yeah, it is very very cool. I recommend really diving into that book. It's for 151 pages. It's like it's grand, it's melancholic,
yeah.
it's inspirational, it's beautiful, it's really thought provoking.